You had a powerful response to this story last night.
10-year-old boy,
A teenage girl who
driven to commit suicide.
took her own life last year.
Drawing attention tonight to the issue of bullying.
I think people don't see a way out. They want a way out. They want a way to stop suffering. They want a way to stop being in pain. And they can't see a way out.
The one thing we all had in common was that we were silent. The reason I chose to do this documentary was because at the age of 15 myself, I attempted suicide. Obviously you can tell I'm a bigger person. So I dealt with that. I dealt with my self-confidence issues, being teased or bullied by it. I had a lot of people around me or friends or family who were lighter skinned or who were mixed, and it was always hinted that they were prettier. And so in my mind, like I was just told, I thought there was something wrong with me. And so I decided to try to take my life by cutting myself. I got the razor all the way up to here. And I was just like this. I was just like this. Like my knuckle is like right on here. And I was finna take my first cut. And I heard a voice say, "Don't do it. Don't do it. You got too much to live for. You got too much going on. Too much is gonna happen for you. Don't do it." And so at that moment, that was when I knew, that was my personal story. I knew God was real. After going through something so personal like that, I couldn't tell anybody. So I kept the secret for 5 years. And during those 5 years, I heard a lot of things. Mainly a lot of stuff sounded like this.
My feelings were that it only happened to weak-minded people and white people. True story. I thought black people were too strong to ever do something stupid like killing themselves.
Sophomore year, I went to the GSU Counseling Center, the Testing and Counseling Center for help, and they helped me get better. I knew I wasn't the only one that went through that. And I could never understand why in the black community, especially in the black community, why when it came to suicide, nobody really talked about the one they accepted. Or it's like they shuddered when they heard the word suicide. So I knew that I had to find somebody, or I had to find sources that identified with me or who knew what I was going through.
The first time I ever heard about suicide was from a family friend, actually. So a friend of my parents, their son had committed suicide laying on the train tracks. And it was something that was kind of shoo-shooed, hush-hushed. We didn't talk about, and I didn't totally understand. I didn't get it, but I knew the parents were really upset. What else did I hear about suicide? Going to hell. So I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, and that's all that you heard was that's something you can't do, you don't do, because you're gonna burn or whatever.
It came to mind. I was like, no, I shouldn't do it. It's kind of bad. But as things started to progress in life, I was more open and willing to it after I had done some research on it and how it affected families. I tried to figure out ways to go about it in ways that wouldn't affect my family as harsh. So I opened up to it more as I felt myself depressing.
Well, I can't think back as to when I first heard the term, but growing up in church, we were always taught that suicide was sinful, that when you commit suicide, you automatically burn in hell because you took the place of God in determining when your life would end. But my opinion of suicide, I don't see it as a sinful thing. Biblically it is, but I see it honestly, one, it's kind of a selfish thing because suicide, people think that when they commit suicide, it only affects them. They're just gone and nobody else is going to be affected by it, but it does affect them. And then one, I see suicide as a very misunderstood thing. People don't understand, they can't really give their opinion or say what suicide means to them until they've not experienced it, but had their bout with it or thought of it as a resolution to whatever problem they were dealing with.
Personally, because I was suicidal for like a year and a half. At first it was just like my grandmother died, I was sad, and then my boyfriend got shot, I got sadder, and then my mom lost her job when we moved. It was like, as it piled up, it was just, got to a point where it was like I couldn't handle it, and then other things was going on in my life that didn't have nothing to do with my family. It was just, at first I had a little diary and I wrote it in there, and my brother found it, he gave it to my father. And he was like, next time you're feeling this way, I'll help you with it. And I was like, it made me feel like if you're okay with helping me commit suicide, then why not? So it kind of like furthered my depression in a way. So it was like, I'm not really a big pill person, so it was like, let me drink some cough syrup, or let me overdose on something else that I don't have to necessarily swallow as a whole pill. So it's just like, as things progressed farther, it was more of a depression for myself and a way to get out of it. And then after not being successful, I kind of looked for a different way to go, which brought me like closer to my school and education, and basically just brought me closer to myself and what's important to me.
It also didn't help that I never had friends that committed suicide, but I had friends who were self-haters. So it didn't help being around them and them putting that spirit of self-hate within me as well, because there is, you do exchange spirits when you're associated with somebody. And it didn't help that I was already grappling with these demons and being around others who had those same demons. There was no way that we could all help each other when we're still dealing with that ourselves and don't have the resolution to it. I had a colleague who actually had a cousin that killed himself, and that affected him. He was angry at the person, but he was also sad because it's like, you know, I lost my cousin at the same time. What was he thinking? He has children. There were so many people that would have helped him for whatever reason. So suicide has affected me in many different ways, but I think it affects me more as a person that has tried to commit it. Mm-hmm. One thing that has always been my downfall, I don't like being vulnerable in front of people, because I feel like when you're vulnerable, people can take advantage, and that has happened to me. And then, honestly, what helped me, I guess, be able to grapple with some of the issues in my life was confiding in my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I'm about to cry.
Oh, don't cry. It's okay. Oh, take a minute.
So I think that's why a lot of times people don't go to other people and talk to them about it, because they've been hurt in doing that in the past. Maybe they did some things or talked to some people and got a negative response from them that taught them to keep quiet. And that silence was the best thing that they could do to protect their feelings. So they just want to deal with the issue themselves and not ask any advice and not ask what to do, and to take matters into their own hands. But that's where the problem comes in, because nobody would advise them to commit suicide. But people don't listen enough to understand where people are and to know that they may be in that space where they need some support and help to prevent them from making some decisions that they would regret or that their family would regret for the rest of their lives.
Also, what's interesting was the online feedback I got from people, like especially these two extraordinary women, Liz S. and Renee Brown. Both of them were very extraordinary women that told me some very interesting stories like this.
I used to have thoughts of ending my life. I was in abusive relationships from about the age 17 until 28. I had my freedom taken away from me. I was not allowed to dress a certain way, talk a certain way. I wasn't even allowed to drive. I had to stay in the house while the men I was with the other times, did whatever to whoever, whenever. I was jumped on in front of my kids, belittled, spit on, head-butted, forced to have sex. My self-esteem was on the bottom of my shoe. Well, one day I had enough. I said to myself, if he didn't kill me, I would do it myself. This guy came home from doing whatever, dragged me down the hallway, and just did whatever he felt he wanted to do. I got away from him and locked myself in the bathroom. I started cutting myself until I got tired and couldn't cut anymore. He eventually kicked the door in and called the police and left me in the house with my kids. I was on Wellbutrin for a while. It just made my thoughts worse. So a lot of visits to a psychiatrist, and 5 years later, I have 7 kids. I'm getting my bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 10 months. I'm buying my own home. I still don't drive, but I'm working on that as well. I hope my stories help you with what you are working on. Good luck on your career, and God bless you.
In my profession, as one who teaches people how to transcend thinking, how to settle the mind down from many, many thoughts, no matter what their thoughts, no matter the content, the thoughts could be of hurting someone or hurting themselves or loving someone or loving themselves. It doesn't matter what the thoughts are, but our minds have the capacity to go from many thoughts to fewer thoughts, to fewer thoughts, to one thought, and then to no thoughts. And to have no thoughts in the mind is experienced as silence, pure silence. It can also be called pure consciousness or pure awareness. So within us and within everyone is a source of the mind that is totally silent.
Physical pain is something that's really adaptive for the human species. So if we couldn't feel physical pain, when we discovered fire, we would have just burnt up. It gives us a message. It tells us do something differently. For example, you put your hand on a hot stove, physical pain says move that hand. Really quickly you know what to do. So I think about emotional pain working exactly the same way. When you're having insomnia, when you're having depressed feelings, you're feeling hopeless, maybe you're thinking about dying, maybe you are having panic attacks, insomnia, anxiety, whatever, that pain is giving you a message. It's telling you something needs to change. And when somebody's feeling suicidal, the volume is turned up super, super loud on that message. So the more pain you're in, the louder the message is. Change. Pay attention.
To the survivors and the people who are contemplating it, don't ever suffer in silence. So if you have those thoughts, you need to find somebody that you trust and can give you some type of wise counseling. Do not suffer in silence.
Don't suffer in silence.
No sufre en silencio.
Suffer in silence.
Don't suffer in silence.
不要在沉默中挣扎。Huwag magdusa sa katahimikan.
Don't suffer in silence. Use silence to gain access to the universe.
Don't suffer in silence alone.
At my lowest point.